Afternoon. It is News Radio 1029 KARN. I'm your host, Brad Schmidt. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. 501-403-KARN, 501-403-5276. I got the cameras squared up first thing right out of the box today, so we got that going. I did it right today. I got my Michael White for Arkansas T-shirt on. If you're interested in District 75, I've got my I don't know if you can see this. I've got my my fake knockoff Pagani design watch that kind of looks like a Rolex, and it's set to 6:07. So I'm about 4 hours ahead. So I'm already ready for the end of the day. It's one of those days. I'm actually in a really good mood today. I got a lot to get to, a lot to talk about today. Hoping to have a little bit of fun. It is election season, of course, and we all are probably just about worn out with the election at this point. I know I am looking forward to talking about what we're going to be doing moving forward as a nation, as a state. Of course, not a whole lot changing in the state of Arkansas. We don't have any major, statewide elections. We've got the treasurer's office. That's not necessarily a policy office, so it's not going to see a lot of change no matter who gets elected. It's just mostly the wisdom of how the investments are managed and all that kind of stuff in the state. There's no real big, there's not a governor's race, anything like that. Neither one of the Senate seats are up for election this time around. And so, very, very interesting election nationally. Not a whole lot going on here locally. Like I said, I think the most interesting race to me, and not just because he's my friend, is the District 75 race here in Arkansas. And the reason it's so interesting is because there is an opportunity to see a different approach to governance. And I'm gonna step out of Arkansas, step out of the kind of the leanings that draw me towards somebody that I've become friends with, and talk about it from an outside perspective. So a few years back, there was a similar race in Wyoming where there was a libertarian candidate running unopposed against a Democrat. Libertarian ended up winning. And what ended up happening was something that nobody really saw coming. There were a lot of bills that were over the course of their legislative session. And I say a lot, I don't know exactly how many, but there were a number of bills that were important and things that people wanted to get done, and bills that would have been typically adjudicated or listened to, approached from, however you want to say it, the perspective of right versus left, Republican versus Democrat, majority versus minority, that would have never passed because there would have been no support from the Democrats, or vice versa, there would have been no support from the Republicans because, well, that's a Democrat bill, I'm not going to sign on to it, or it's a Republican bill, so I'm not going to sign on to it. And so what ended up happening is oftentimes these various legislators would bring a bill that they thought, hey, this is a good bill that genuinely does good for the state of Wyoming. And they said, I know it'll never get passed if I put it forward. If I bring it to the legislature, it'll never make its way because there won't be any Republican support for it, or vice versa. There won't be any Democrat support for it. So they would take these bills, these ideas, to the Libertarian candidate, and the Libertarian candidate would look at him and go, okay, is this something that is, genuinely a good thing that focuses on liberty, helps the people? It's not, just political football garbage, but actual legitimate, valuable legislation. And if it was, he would then sign on as the sponsor and put it forward not as a Republican bill or a Democrat bill, but as a libertarian bill or an independent bill, and could then get support from both sides of the aisle to move it forward and get some positive legislation moved forward that might not otherwise get moved forward. And we have an opportunity to do this in Arkansas. And this is a genuinely important issue to the entire state of Arkansas, not just because it is a libertarian kind of race, but it gives us an opportunity to get a look to see what a libertarian candidate might do in the state of Arkansas, or maybe in Congress in Washington, D.C., or in the Senate in Washington, D.C. And it may not be here in Arkansas, but it may open the door or lead the way for the opportunity to see something different across the country. And this is also an opportunity to be kind of on the leading edge of something different. So my former state where I moved here from was North Dakota. North Dakota has on the ballot this year an abolition of property taxes. They're talking about abolishing taxes, abolishing property taxes. I believe it's issue 4 in North Dakota. I don't know exactly. I haven't followed it that closely, but I recently sent a message to a friend of mine up there who's in politics. In fact, he was running for governor this year up in North Dakota, and just said, hey, he's part of his name is Rick Becker. He's part of the committee or the group that's trying to push this and get property taxes abolished. And I asked him, hey, what are your thoughts? How are you feeling about it? Is there any polling data? Have you heard anything? And he said, the opposition has some polling data, but we haven't seen it, so we don't really know how it's going to go. And my response to him was, well, here's to North Dakota being at the tip of the spear as it relates to getting rid of property taxes across the country. And so there are moments in political history where something seemingly unimportant or even somewhat irrelevant becomes the catalyst that begins to move the entire country in a positive direction. I mean, imagine what it would look like for the United States Congress to not just be Republicans versus Democrats in a 51-49 back and forth pendulum swing that never really accomplishes anything moving forward, but instead we begin to see, a say 40% Republican, 40% Democrat, and 20% third party, libertarian or some other independent, whatever, doesn't really matter. Imagine what that begins to look like, where there has to be some true coalition building to move these bills forward. And that there are some people in those positions that are actively going, look, yeah, we need to manage this issue with the roads and the bridges, or we need to deal with this with crime, or we need to deal with that with the military or whatever, but we are absolutely not going to violate the Constitution. And until you can put together a bill or a budget or a process of whatever, fixing whatever problem that is not going to trample on the rights of the American people, that's not going to trample on the Constitution, that's not going to raise taxes or raise spending or whatever it is, we are absolutely not going to get on board with it until you start writing these bills in a way that are genuinely beneficial, that are simple for the average American to understand, that are budget neutral, that are whatever. And the only way those things get passed is if those provisions are in there. And the only way we're going to do that is if we begin to see an expansion of political views within the House and the Senate and the Congress and all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not saying we should eliminate one party or the other, but there is a real need to have a third voice that balances the uniparty that is the Democrats and Republicans in Washington, D.C. right now, as they all work together to line their own pockets, to continue to spend trillions of dollars more than we have, and then either print more money, devaluing our currency, or they simply drive us farther and farther in debt, which in the end leads to, again, further devaluing our currency. So there's some genuinely exciting things happening in the state of Arkansas this election cycle. And I think it's really cool that we get to be a part of it, not just in District 75 with a libertarian, unopposed against a Democrat, but we have a genuine candidate in the Libertarian Party running for state treasurer that has genuinely created what appears to be a legitimate three-way race. That there could, I will not be surprised. No matter who wins the treasurer's race, I won't be surprised. They'll go, oh, all right, I guess that makes sense. There's nothing about that race that will surprise me. And like I said, I'm just excited. I think we are in a position to where we're going to see some very, very, or potentially could see some very, very exciting things in the state of Arkansas, and hopefully will be the first domino that falls in that realm across this country as we start to see an expansion of independent thought as it relates to politics. So with that, we'll continue with the Schmidt Show in just a moment on News Radio 102.9 KRN.